The desert wind carried sand across the cracked highway as Maya Rodriguez checked her weapon for the third time that morning. Her hands moved with practiced precision, each motion automatic after 15 years in covert operations. The safe house behind her looked like any other abandoned building in this forgotten corner of the Syrian border. But inside its walls sat intelligence that could prevent the largest terrorist attack planned on European soil in decades. She pressed her earpiece deeper into her ear canal. Static crackled, then nothing. The communication blackout had started exactly 12 minutes ago, right on schedule according to the enemy's pattern. They knew someone was coming. They always knew. Maya's partner, James Chen, emerged from the building's shadow, his face grim beneath the desert camouflage. He had been her backup for 6 years, surviving operations in 12 different countries. They communicated without words now, a slight nod, a hand gesture, an exchange of looks that held entire conversations. 3 vehicles approaching from the east, James whispered, his accent barely noticeable despite his Beijing origins. Moving slow. Tactical formation. Maya felt her pulse steady rather than quicken. Fear was an old companion she had learned to control years ago during her first mission in Kabul. That mission had taught her that panic killed faster than bullets. She had watched it claim her first team leader, a man who froze when he should have moved. The vehicles appeared on the horizon, black shapes shimmering in the heat waves rising from the asphalt. Maya counted 7 hostiles minimum, possibly more inside the transport truck trailing behind. The odds were never in their favor on these missions. That was the nature of deep cover work. You went in outnumbered, outgunned, often without backup, because backup would blow your cover. She thought briefly of her daughter, Sophia, now 8 years old, living with Maya's sister in Portland. Sophia thought her mother worked for an international aid organization, traveling to help people in dangerous places. It was not entirely a lie. Maya did help people, just not in the way her daughter imagined. The vehicles stopped 300 meters out. Doors opened with metallic clangs that echoed across the empty landscape. Men emerged, armed with automatic weapons, their movements coordinated and professional. These were not the usual hired thugs. These were trained soldiers, probably former military from Eastern Europe. Judging by their formation style, Maya recognized the man who stepped from the lead vehicle immediately. Viktor Kozlov, Russian former Spetsnaz, now one of the most wanted arms dealers in the world. Intelligence had placed him in Moscow last week. His presence here meant the situation was far more serious than the briefing had indicated. "We have a problem," Maya said quietly. James had seen him too. His jaw tightened, but his hands remained steady on his rifle. "Orders. We stick to the mission. Extract the hard drive, get to the extraction point." That was before Kozlov showed up with an army. Maya allowed herself a thin smile. "Then we improvise." Kozlov stood in the open, making no attempt to take cover. He raised something to his mouth, and speakers mounted on the vehicles crackled to life. His voice boomed across the desert, speaking in accented English. "Agent Rodriguez. Yes, I know who you are. I know why you are here. I even know about your daughter, Sophia. Beautiful child. She likes strawberry ice cream, does she not?" Maya's blood went cold, but her face remained impassive. The mention of Sophia was a tactic, nothing more. Kozlov could not touch her daughter. Sophia was protected by the agency, hidden behind layers of security. Yet the fact that he knew her name meant their intelligence leak was worse than suspected. "Come out now," Kozlov continued. "Bring your partner. Bring the hard drive. Do this, and you both walk away. You have my word." James glanced at Maya. He's lying, obviously. "So what's the play?" Maya studied the terrain. The safe house backed up against a rocky hillside riddled with caves. Intelligence reports mentioned an old smuggler's tunnel system, though the maps were decades old and possibly unreliable. Behind Kozlov's position, the desert stretched flat and open for kilometers. Offering no escape route, the tunnel was their only option. "We go down," Maya said. "Through the caves. There's supposed to be a passage that leads north toward the valley. Supposed to be? 70% confidence, according to the satellite analysis. James managed a dark laugh. I've survived worse odds. It had 2 minutes, maybe 3, before Kozlov lost patience and ordered his men forward. Maya moved quickly through the safe house, retrieving the hard drive from its hiding place beneath a loose floor tile. The device was smaller than her palm, but contained terabyte upon terabyte of encrypted data detailing financial transactions. Weapon shipments, an attack plan stretching across 5 continents. She secured it in the waterproof case, attached to her tactical vest, just as the first bullets shattered the windows. Glass exploded inward, and Maya dropped flat, rolling toward the back corridor. James provided covering fire, his shots precise and measured. Each one calculated to slow the advance without wasting ammunition. They reached the basement entrance together, descending stone steps worn smooth by decades of use. The air grew cooler, tinged with the mineral smell of deep earth. Maya activated her headlamp, illuminating rough-hewn walls and a narrow passage leading into darkness. "You have 30 seconds, Kozlov's voice echoed from above. "Now, without the speakers, just raw volume. Then, I start burning the building. You will die of smoke inhalation before the flames reach you. Not a pleasant death, I assure you." Maya found the entrance to the tunnel system, crack in the rock wall barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. She went first, feeling the stone scrape against her vest and shoulders. Behind her, James grunted as he forced his larger frame through the opening. The passage opened into a natural cave system. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, a steady rhythm that echoed off unseen walls. Maya consulted her tactical GPS, but the signal was weak this far underground. The display flickering and uncertain. They heard the first explosion above, a muffled boom that sent dust cascading from the ceiling. Kozlov was making good on his threat, using incendiaries to smoke them out or kill them. Either outcome would suit him fine. Maya chose a passage heading north, based on instinct as much as reason. The tunnel descended steeply, forcing them to climb down using handholds carved into the rock by ancient smugglers. Time lost meaning in the darkness. They might have been underground for 10 minutes or an hour. Then they heard the voices. Kozlov had sent men into the tunnels after them. Of course he had. The man was thorough, a quality that made him extremely dangerous. Maya could hear at least 3 distinct voices, possibly more, their Russian words bouncing off the cave walls in distorted echoes. "Keep moving," James whispered. "I'll slow them down." "Negative. We stay together." "Maya, if they catch us both," I said no. They pressed deeper into the mountain's heart, the passage narrowing until they had to crawl on hands and knees. Maya's headlamp revealed ancient marks on the walls, symbols she could not read. Remnants of people who had used these tunnels long before, modern borders and modern wars. The passage opened suddenly into a larger chamber. Maya's light caught something that made her freeze. Bones. Human remains scattered across the floor. Some still partially clothed in rotted fabric. These were not ancient. Some of the clothing showed modern synthetic materials. "Smugglers," James said quietly. "Looks like the tunnel system isn't as safe as the intelligence suggested." Maya noticed the bones were clustered near what appeared to be a collapse in the far wall. The roof had caved in at some point, sealing that passage permanently. She checked her GPS again. Still no signal. They were completely blind down here, navigating by guesswork and luck. The voices behind them grew louder. Closer. Maya made a decision. She pulled a small charge from her pack, a shaped demolition device designed for breaching doors. "Set yours as well. We'll collapse this chamber behind us, by some time." They planted the charges quickly, setting timers for 60 seconds. Maya found another passage on the chamber's opposite side, this one ascending sharply. They climbed as fast as the steep angle allowed, their lungs burning in the thin underground air. The explosion came muffled but powerful, shaking the walls around them. Dust and debris blasted through the tunnel, and Maya covered her face, pressing against James as the shockwave passed. When the air cleared, they looked back to see their path blocked by tons of fallen rock. "It'll hold them," James said between breaths. For a while, anyway. They climbed for what felt like hours, the passage growing narrower and steeper. Maya's shoulders ached, her fingers raw from gripping sharp stone. Just when she thought they might be trapped in this ascending tunnel forever, she saw it. A faint glow of natural light filtering through cracks in the rock above. They emerged from a hidden opening in the hillside, concealed behind thorny bushes that scratched their exposed skin. The sun had moved across the sky, indicating they had been underground for nearly 3 hours. Maya oriented herself quickly. They were north of the safe house, perhaps 2 kilometers from their original extraction point. But as they cleared the vegetation and stood in the fading afternoon light, Maya's brief moment of relief evaporated. On the hillside opposite them, perhaps 400 meters away, stood Viktor Kozlov with a rifle eye. In his hands and a smile on his face, he had anticipated their route. He had known about the tunnels, had probably even known about the collapse that would force them to this specific exit. They had not escaped at all. They had walked directly into his trap. Viktor Kozlov lowered his rifle slightly. The barrel still pointed in their general direction, but not aimed with lethal precision. His smile widened, revealing teeth to white and perfect for a man who had spent 20 years in the world's most brutal conflicts. Maya counted 6 other men positioned around him, all with clear sightlines, all armed with weapons capable of cutting them down before they could take 3 steps. "You are predictable," Agent Rodriguez Kozlov called out, his voice carrying easily across the rocky terrain. "Your file says you always choose the aggressive option when cornered. Underground, forward, through the danger rather than around it. This makes you excellent at your job, but also quite easy to anticipate." Maya kept her hands visible, away from her weapons. James stood beside her, equally still, his eyes scanning for any opening, any tactical advantage. There was none. They were caught in a perfect kill box. "The hard drive," Kozlov continued, taking several steps closer. "Give it to me now, and I will let you live. You can return to your daughter. Tell her bedtime stories. Watch her grow up. Is that not worth more than this mission?" Maya's mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds and outcomes. If she surrendered the drive, Kozlov would kill them anyway. The intelligence it contained would expose his entire network, name his buyers, reveal attack plans that intelligence agencies had been chasing for 3 years. He could not afford to let them live with that knowledge. But something in his approach bothered her. Kozlov was being too theatrical, too slow. A man in his position should have simply ordered his men to fire, take the drive from their bodies, and move on. Instead, he was talking, negotiating, wasting time. He wanted something else. "You know I cannot give you the drive," Maya said, her voice steady. "And you know you cannot let us go, even if I did." Kozlov tilted his head, acknowledging the truth of her statement. "Perhaps. But consider this. I am not your real enemy today. Your own people have betrayed you. How else would I know your extraction point? How else would I know about your daughter?" "Psychological warfare," James muttered. "Classic disinformation tactic." But Maya felt a cold certainty settling in her gut. Kozlov was right. Too many things about this mission had felt wrong from the start. The intelligence had been too specific, too convenient. The safe house location had been compromised before they even arrived. And now, Kozlov knew details about her daughter that should have been buried under layers of classified security. Someone on the inside was feeding him information. "I see you understand," Kozlov said, noticing the change in her expression. "Your handler, Director Brennan, has been quite helpful. Did you know he gambles? Quite badly, as it happens. He owes certain people a great deal of money. People I work with." Maya's blood went cold, but not from fear. From rage. Marcus Brennan had been her handler for 4 years. She had trusted him with her life, with her daughter's location, with operational secrets that could topple governments. If Kozlov was telling the truth, then every mission over the past year had been compromised. Every agent under Brennan's command potentially exposed. "You are lying," James said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Then explain how I knew about the tunnel exit." "That information is not in any intelligence file. Only Brennan had access to the complete geological surveys of this region. Only he knew where you would emerge. Kozlov raised his hand, and his men lifted their weapons higher, fingers moving to triggers. Now, the hard drive. My patience has limits, Agent Rodriguez. Maya's hand moved slowly toward the case on her vest, but her eyes never left Kozlov's face. She was watching for the tell, the tiny shift in expression that would indicate he was about to give the kill order. Because he would give it. As soon as he had the drive in hand, they were dead. Her fingers touched the case's seal, and then she saw it. A flash of light on the hillside beyond Kozlov's position followed immediately by another. Sniper scopes, catching the late afternoon sun. 2 positions, maybe 3. But whose snipers? Kozlov's reinforcements, or had the agency sent backup after all? She made her decision in the space between heartbeats. Maya smiled. It was not a forced smile, not a nervous gesture. It was genuine, wild, the smile of someone who had just decided to gamble everything on a single moment of chaos. Her hand moved away from the case and instead grabbed a flashbang grenade from her belt. What are you doing? Kozlov's smile vanished, replaced by sudden alertness. Improvising, Maya said, and pulled the pin. She threw herself backward as she released the grenade. Pulling James down with her behind a cluster of rocks, the flashbang detonated in midair between them and Kozlov's position. A devastating burst of light and sound designed to overwhelm the senses. In that same instant, the hillside beyond erupted in gunfire. The snipers Maya had spotted opened fire, but they were not targeting her and James. High-powered rounds tore into Kozlov's men. Precisely placed shots from professional marksmen. 2 of Kozlov's soldiers went down immediately, clutching fatal wounds. The others scattered, seeking cover, their careful formation dissolving into chaos. Maya did not waste the opportunity. She was up and moving before the flashbang's echo faded, her weapon drawn, firing controlled bursts at the nearest hostile. James was right beside her, laying down suppressing fire that forced Kozlov himself to dive behind a boulder. They ran toward the sound of the sniper fire, zigzagging across the broken ground, using every depression and rock for cover. Bullets chased them, kicking up dirt and stone fragments, but the incoming fire was scattered, panicked. Kozlov's men were professional, but they were also trapped between 2 threats now, and that split their attention. Degraded their accuracy, Maya reached the base of the sniper hillside and found a narrow ravine that offered concealment from Kozlov's position. She pressed into it, James sliding in beside her, both of them breathing hard but controlled. Who the hell is shooting at them? James panted. No idea, but I am not complaining. The gunfire continued above them, methodical and brutal. Maya risked a glance around the ravine's edge and saw Kozlov retreating with his remaining men toward their vehicles. 3 of his soldiers lay unmoving on the rocky ground. The snipers had done devastating work in under 60 seconds. Then, movement on the hillside above. 2 figures descended quickly, moving with the fluid grace of special operations veterans. They wore no identifying markings, no flags or unit patches. Just dark tactical gear that could have belonged to any of a dozen military or private security organizations. The lead figure reached their position and removed a balaclava, revealing a woman in her 40s with close-cropped gray hair and ice-blue eyes. Maya recognized her immediately and felt a surge of relief mixed with confusion. Agent Volkov, Maya said. What are you doing here? Natasha Volkov had been a Russian intelligence officer before defecting to the West 5 years ago. She now worked for an international task force that operated in the shadows between official government agencies, handling missions too sensitive or too dirty for regular channels. Maya had worked with her twice before, both times in situations where the normal rules of engagement did not apply. Saving your life, apparently, Natasha replied in her clipped accent, though you seem to have done well enough on your own. That smile before the flashbang, very theatrical. I almost shot you myself out of confusion. The second figure remained silent, weapon trained on the direction Kozlov had retreated. Maya could not see the person's face behind the balaclava, but something about the stance felt familiar. You have been tracking Kozlov too, Maya said, understanding dawning. This was not about rescuing us. We track many people, Natasha said with a slight smile. But yes, Kozlov is a primary target. When our intelligence indicated he would be here, we came prepared. The fact that you were also here is what you might call fortunate coincidence. Brennan, Maya said. Is it true? Is he compromised? Natasha's expression hardened. That is a complicated question with an uncomfortable answer. Director Brennan is not directly working for Kozlov, but he has been manipulated through his gambling debts, fed false intelligence, pressured into decisions that benefit Kozlov's network. He may not even fully realize how compromised he has become. James swore quietly. How many operations has he burned? Enough that your agency is conducting a full internal review. But that is not your concern right now. Natasha looked toward the sound of vehicle engines starting in the distance. Kozlov is retreating, but he will regroup. This area will be swarming with his reinforcements within the hour. We need to move. Our extraction point is 2 kilometers south, Maya said. Compromised. Brennan gave Kozlov that location this morning. That is why we intercepted his communications and came here instead. Natasha gestured toward the hillside. We have transport 3 kilometers north. It will be tight quarters, but we can all fit. Maya exchanged a look with James. They had no other options. Their own agency was compromised, their handler potentially traitorous, their extraction plan burned. Trusting Natasha was a calculated risk, but at this point, it was the only move they had. Lead the way, Maya said. They moved quickly across the rugged terrain, Natasha's second operative taking point while she covered their rear. The person had still not spoken or removed the balaclava, and that bothered Maya more than she wanted to admit. In her experience, anonymity in the field usually meant someone was operating outside their official jurisdiction, someone who could not afford to be identified. They covered 2 kilometers in 40 minutes, moving fast but carefully. Always aware that Kozlov's forces could be anywhere in these hills. The sun was setting now, painting the desert in shades of orange and crimson that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Natasha's transport turned out to be an unmarked helicopter concealed in a rocky canyon, covered with camouflage netting that made it nearly invisible from above. The pilot emerged as they approached, doing final pre-flight checks. Everyone in, Natasha ordered. We have a narrow window before Kozlov's people lock down the airspace. Maya climbed aboard, securing herself in one of the passenger seats. The hard drive was still safe on her vest, its weight a constant reminder of what they had been through to protect it. James took the seat beside her, checking his weapon automatically despite the relative safety of the aircraft. The silent operative climbed in last, taking a position near the door with weapon ready. As the helicopter's engines spooled up and they lifted off, Maya found herself studying that figure, trying to place what seemed so familiar. They gained altitude quickly, the desert falling away beneath them. Maya watched through the window as the last light faded from the sky, transforming the landscape into an abstract pattern of shadows and darkness. Somewhere down there, Kozlov was planning his next move. Probably already working on damage control, alerting his network that the operation had failed. But the hard drive was safe. The intelligence would reach the proper authorities. Attacks would be prevented, lives saved, Kozlov's network disrupted. The mission was a success, even if every other aspect had gone completely wrong. Where are we heading? James asked Natasha over the helicopter's noise. Somewhere safe. Somewhere your compromised agency cannot reach you until we sort out this mess with Brennan. Maya leaned back in her seat, exhaustion finally catching up with her. In the chaos of the mission, she had operated on pure adrenaline and training. Now, with relative safety, her body was reminding her that she had been running and fighting for hours. The silent operative finally moved, reaching up to remove the balaclava. Maya's exhaustion vanished instantly, replaced by shock that sent ice through her veins. The face beneath the mask was younger than the others, mid-20s perhaps, with features that Maya knew better than her own. Features she saw every time she looked at recent photographs, though aged up from the 8-year-old girl she remembered. It was impossible. It was insane. But Maya was staring at what appeared to be an adult version of her daughter. Sophia, Maya's hand moved instinctively toward her weapon, years of training overriding the shock that froze her thoughts. But Natasha was faster, placing a firm hand on Maya's wrist. "She is not a threat," Natasha said calmly, her voice cutting through the helicopter's roar. "I know this is confusing, but you need to listen." "That is impossible," Maya whispered, unable to tear her eyes away from the young woman who wore Sophia's face with 15 additional years of life etched into it. "My daughter is 8 years old. She is safe in Portland with my sister." The young woman met Maya's stare with eyes that held a familiar determination, a stubbornness Maya recognized because she saw it in her own reflection every day. "My name is Sofia Rodriguez. I am 23 years old. And yes, I am your daughter. Just not from your timeline." James leaned forward, his tactical mind trying to process information that defied everything rational. "What the hell does that mean, not from your timeline?" Natasha sighed, settling back in her seat as the helicopter banked north, following a flight path that would keep them below radar coverage. "The organization I work for is not exactly what I told you. We operate across temporal boundaries, monitoring and occasionally interfering with events that could cause catastrophic timeline disruptions." Maya felt like the ground had vanished beneath her. That sensation of freefall that came in nightmares. She had faced terrorists, survived combat situations that would have broken most soldiers, operated in countries where capture meant torture and death. But this was different. This challenged the very foundation of reality as she understood it. "Time travel," James said flatly. "You are telling us time travel is real." "Not travel exactly," the older Sophia said, speaking for the first time since removing her mask. Her voice was eerily similar to Maya's own, just slightly deeper, shaped by experiences Maya could not imagine. More like parallel timeline observation and limited intervention. The technology exists, hidden from most governments and agencies, controlled by a coalition that formed after discovering it 30 years ago. Maya forced herself to think past the impossibility, to focus on operational realities. "Why are you here? Why now?" Natasha exchanged a glance with Sophia before responding. "Because in the timeline Sophia comes from, this mission went very differently. You gave Kozlov the hard drive to save James's life. Kozlov used that intelligence to launch 3 coordinated attacks across Europe that killed over 2,000 people. The resulting chaos destabilized multiple governments and led to a cascade of conflicts that consumed the next decade. And you..." Maya looked at her daughter's adult face, searching for deception and finding none. "What happened to you in that timeline?" Sophia's expression darkened. "You died 3 months after this mission. Kozlov's people tracked you down, used you to get to Brennan and other compromised agents. I was 10 years old when I found out my mother was not actually helping refugees overseas, but fighting covert wars. 14, when I joined the same agency that got her killed. 20, when Natasha recruited me into this organization to help prevent it all from happening." The helicopter flew through the darkening sky, carrying them away from Kozlov's forces, away from the compromised agency, away from everything Maya thought she understood about her world. She looked down at her hands, half expecting them to fade or shimmer or show some sign that reality had broken. They looked exactly as they always had, scarred and calloused from years of hard use. "Show me proof," Maya said quietly. "Something only my daughter would know." Sophia reached into a pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. She handed it to Maya carefully, as if the image was made of something more fragile than paper. Maya took it with trembling fingers. The photograph showed a younger Maya, probably in her late 20s, standing on a beach with a little girl perched on her shoulders. The girl wore a bright yellow swimsuit and had both hands raised triumphantly toward the sky. Maya remembered that day. It was Sophia's 4th birthday, one of the last normal moments they had shared before. Maya's career consumed everything, but that was not what made Maya's breath catch. On the back of the photograph, in Maya's own handwriting, was a message she had written that day. A message she had never shared with anyone, not even her sister. "To my little warrior princess," Maya read aloud, her voice barely audible. "May you always face the world with your hands raised high and your heart full of joy. Love you to the moon and back times infinity. Mama." She had tucked that photo in a book that night, planning to give it to Sophia when she was older. But months later, when the missions became more dangerous and the time at home grew shorter, Maya had moved the photo to a secure deposit box. She had never mentioned it to Sophia, wanting to preserve that moment, that piece of normalcy, for some future time when her daughter was old enough to understand. "Hey, I found it after you died," Sophia said softly. "In your things, it was one of the few personal items you kept. I have carried it through every mission, every operation, every moment when I needed to remember why I was fighting." Maya closed her eyes, fighting against emotions she could not afford right now. Later, when they were safe, when she had time to process, she could break down. But not here. Not with Kozlov still hunting them. Not with a mission still incomplete. "Okay," Maya said, opening her eyes and meeting Sophia's gaze directly. "I believe you. Which means you came back to change what happens today. To make sure I do not give Kozlov the drive to prevent those attacks? We have been tracking this timeline carefully, waiting for the optimal intervention point. Too early, and we risk creating worse alternatives. Too late, and the cascade becomes irreversible." James was still processing, his analytical mind working through implications. "If you change the timeline, then Sophia's timeline, the one where Maya dies, does that cease to exist? Does she just vanish?" "Timeline mechanics are complicated," Natasha said. "The simple answer is that Sophia's timeline continues existing as a parallel possibility. But this timeline, the one we are creating through our choices right now, branches away from it. Both are real. Both matter." "But you saved us," Maya said to Sophia. "Your shots took down Kozlov's men, gave us the opening to escape. In your timeline, that did not happen. So what did happen?" Sophia's jaw tightened, and Maya recognized that expression too. It was the look Sophia got when remembering something painful, when pushing through trauma to accomplish a necessary task. "In my timeline, Kozlov had a sniper positioned on that hillside. When you and James emerged from the tunnel, the sniper killed James immediately. You surrendered to save yourself? Tried to bargain with Kozlov? He took the drive and shot you anyway, but you survived long enough to be extracted by agency backup. James died in your arms." James exhaled slowly. "Well, that is significantly worse than today's outcome." "The hard drive data is what matters most," Sophia continued. "In my timeline, it took 6 months to recover enough intelligence to piece together Kozlov's plans. But by then, 2 of the 3 attacks had already occurred. The third was stopped, but the damage was done. The geopolitical consequences rippled outward for years." Maya studied her daughter's face, seeing the weight of those years in eyes too old for her apparent age. This version of Sophia had grown up without a mother, had been shaped by violence and loss into a weapon like Maya herself. It was a future Maya had hoped to prevent by keeping Sophia away from this life, by maintaining the lie of the aid worker mother. But the universe had other plans, apparently. "So what happens now?" Maya asked. "We have the drive. I am alive. James is alive. The attacks will not happen. Mission accomplished." "Not quite," Natasha said. "Kozlov is still active. Brennan is still compromised. And your agency's internal security is still a disaster. Plus, now Kozlov knows you escaped with the drive, which means he will accelerate his other contingency plans. We disrupted one timeline, but we created new problems in the process. That is always the risk with temporal intervention," Sophia added. "You solve one crisis and potentially create 3 others. It is why we intervene so rarely, only when the alternative timeline is catastrophically worse." The helicopter began descending. Approaching what looked like an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of a city Maya did not immediately recognize. Natasha spoke briefly with the pilot, confirming their landing zone was secure. "Where are we?" James asked. "Bucharest," Natasha replied. "We have a safe house here, outside the reach of most intelligence agencies. You will stay there while we clean up this mess with Brennan and determine what Kozlov's next move will be." They landed on a rooftop helipad, the helicopter's skids touching down with barely a bump. Maya unbuckled and stood, her legs unsteady after hours of adrenaline crash. Sophia moved beside her automatically, ready to assist if needed, in that simple gesture. That protective instinct hit Maya harder than any of the day's violence. This was her daughter. Not the 8-year-old girl she had left in Portland, but a version of that girl who had grown up hard and dangerous and brave. A version who had lived through losing her mother and had somehow emerged, strong enough to travel through time to prevent it from happening. "When this is over," Maya said quietly to Sophia as they walked toward the rooftop door, "when Kozlov is handled and Brennan is dealt with, what happens to you? Do you go back to your timeline?" Sophia smiled, and it was achingly familiar, that same slight upturn of lips that Maya saw in her childhood photos. "I stay here, in this timeline, until my mission is complete. Then yes, I return. My timeline still needs me. There are other threats, other missions, and I have people there, people I care about, a life I have built despite everything. But you will remember this. Remember meeting me again?" "Every detail," Sophia promised. "This is what I have wanted since I was 14 years old. The chance to meet my mother as an adult, as an equal. To fight beside her instead of just mourning her." They entered the building, descending stairs into a warren of corridors that had been converted into a secure facility. Natasha led them to a large room set up as an operations center, complete with computer terminals, communication equipment, and a wall of monitors displaying various intelligence feeds. 2 other people waited there, both rising as the group entered. Maya recognized neither of them, but their bearings suggested military or intelligence backgrounds. Natasha made quick introductions. The man was Marcus, American CIA, but operating on loan to Natasha's organization. The woman was Yuki, formerly Japanese Public Security Intelligence Agency. "Status report," Natasha directed. Marcus typed quickly on a keyboard, bringing up multiple data streams on the main monitors. Kozlov returned to his base near the Bulgarian border. He has activated emergency protocols reaching out to his network, likely trying to determine how much of his operation is compromised by the drive's data. "He knows we got it out," Yuki added, her English nearly accent-free. "His communications are panicked. He is asking contacts about temporal intervention protocols, which suggests he suspects what actually happened today." Maya stared at the monitors, watching intercepted communications scroll past in multiple languages. "He knows about your organization? About the timeline intervention capability. Kozlov has suspected for years," Natasha admitted. "He has never had proof, but he is smart enough to recognize patterns that do not fit normal intelligence operations. Today probably confirmed his suspicions, which makes him even more dangerous," Sophia said, moving to study the monitors closely. "A man who knows he is fighting against time travelers becomes unpredictable. He will take risks normal people would not take, operate under the assumption that normal rules no longer apply." James had been silent since they entered the facility, but now he spoke up. "What about Brennan? What is the plan there?" "Your agency is already moving against him," Marcus said. "They were waiting for sufficient evidence, which the hard drive will provide. By tomorrow morning, Brennan will be in custody, and every operation he touched will be under review. It will be a bloodbath of recriminations and investigations." "And us?" Maya asked. "Where do we fit in this new reality?" Natasha turned to face her directly. "That depends on what you want. Your original agency is compromised, your handler is a traitor, and your cover is blown with multiple hostile organizations. You can return, face the investigations, spend months in debriefings and polygraphs and suspicion. Or you can join us. Work for an organization that operates beyond normal jurisdictional boundaries, with resources and capabilities your agency cannot match." "You are recruiting us," James said, a note of disbelief in his voice. "I am offering options," Natasha corrected. "What we do is dangerous, operates in moral gray areas your agency would not officially acknowledge. But we also prevent catastrophes that would never make the history books because we stop them before they begin. Today is proof of that." Maya looked at Sophia, her daughter from another timeline, another life. "If I join, would we work together? Would I get to know you, to understand what you became?" "Sometimes," Sophia said carefully. "Our missions do not always overlap. But yes, we would have time. More time than we ever got in my original timeline." It was surreal. Making career decisions while looking at a version of your daughter who had traveled through time to save your life. But then, Maya's entire life had been surreal for years now. What was one more impossibility stacked on top of the rest? "I need time," Maya said finally. "Time to process this, to understand what it means. Time to figure out if I can do this job knowing that somewhere out there is a little girl who still thinks her mother helps. Refugees and who deserves better than a mother who keeps disappearing into war zones. Take the time you need," Natasha said. "But take it here, in this safe house, while we deal with Kozlov and Brennan. The world outside is about to become very complicated for you both." They were shown 2 quarters, small rooms furnished with military efficiency. Maya sat on the narrow bed, still wearing her tactical gear, still feeling the weight of the hard drive against her chest. Through the walls, she could hear James in the next room, probably making his own calculations about what came next. A knock on the door brought Sophia, now changed out of tactical gear into casual clothes that made her look younger, more vulnerable. She stood in the doorway, uncertain in a way that reminded Maya of the 8-year-old Sophia asking permission to stay up past bedtime. "Can I come in?" Sophia asked. Maya nodded, unable to trust her voice. Sophia entered and sat in the room's single chair, maintaining a respectful distance, not pushing for intimacy she had not earned in this timeline. "I know this is overwhelming," Sophia said. "Meeting me like this, learning about timelines and interventions and futures that might or might not happen. I did not expect it to be easy."
"Oh."
"Tell me about her," Maya said suddenly. "The Sophia in this timeline, the 8-year-old. What should I do differently? How do I keep her from becoming you?" "No offense intended." Sophia smiled sadly. "None taken. I know what I am, what I had to become. And honestly, you cannot stop her from becoming me or someone like me. I have your stubborn gene, your need to make a difference, your inability to sit safely on the sidelines while bad things happen to good people. The question is not whether she follows you into this life, but whether she does it with your guidance or without it." "You want me to tell her the truth," Maya realized. "Eventually, when she is old enough to understand, because the lie, the pretending you are something you are not, that creates distance. It makes kids feel like they cannot trust you, like there is something wrong with them for sensing the deception. I spent years angry at you, at the mother I thought had abandoned me for strangers overseas. When I learned the truth after you died, it explained everything but came too late for us to repair that distance." Maya felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "I thought I was protecting her." "Keeping her away from this darkness. You were protecting her," Sophia said firmly. "You did everything right with the information you had, the situation you were in. I am not here to make you feel guilty. I am here to help you avoid the mistakes that led to my timeline. One of those mistakes was the distance between us. The secrets that kept piling up until they became an insurmountable wall." They sat in silence for a long moment. Mother and daughter separated by impossible circumstances, yet connected by bonds that transcended timelines. Outside, night had fully fallen over Bucharest, and somewhere in the darkness, Viktor Kozlov was planning his next move. Unaware that the game had changed in ways he could barely imagine, 3 days passed in the Bucharest safe house. 3 days of debriefings and intelligence analysis, and waiting for the situation with Kozlov to develop. Maya learned more about temporal mechanics than she had ever wanted to know. Studied files on missions that had never happened in this timeline but were prevented by intervention. From Sophia's organization, the hard drive's data had been transmitted to multiple intelligence agencies through carefully controlled channels that could not be traced back to compromised sources. Within 48 hours, arrests began across Europe and Asia. Kozlov's network was bleeding badly, losing safe houses, bank accounts, and key personnel. But Kozlov himself remained frustratingly out of reach. Apparently having gone to ground somewhere in the Balkans, Marcus Brennan had been arrested at his home in Virginia. Surprised during breakfast with his family? According to the reports Maya saw, he had not resisted, had seemed almost relieved that the deception was over. He was cooperating fully, providing details on how his gambling debts had been leveraged, how carefully his handlers had manipulated him, without him ever quite realizing he was working for the enemy. It was a cautionary tale that made, Maya examined her own life for vulnerabilities, for the hooks that a skilled manipulator might use against her. Sophia was the obvious pressure point, the lever that could move her world. Kozlov had tried to use that knowledge during the standoff, and it had almost worked. If not for the flashbang and Natasha's intervention, Maya might have made a very different choice. On the fourth day, Yuki burst into the operations center where Maya was reviewing files. Her normally calm expression replaced by urgency. "We found him, Kozlov. He is moving, heading west toward the Austrian border. We have maybe a 2-hour window before he reaches a location where we cannot touch him." Tasha was already moving, shouting orders, pulling up maps and satellite feeds. Full team mobilization. This is our best chance to end this threat permanently. Maya stood, her body responding before her mind caught up. "I am coming with you, Negadev," Natasha said, without looking up from the screens. "You are not technically part of this organization. I cannot authorize your involvement in an active operation." "She is right," Sophia said, appearing in the doorway, already dressed in tactical gear. "Maya should not be on this mission. It is too risky, too many variables." Maya felt anger flash through her. The same anger she had felt as a teenager when her parents had tried to tell her she was too small. It's too weak. It's too female for the military. That anger had driven her to become one of the best operators in covert services. It was an old fuel, but it still burned hot. "I have as much reason to stop Kozlov as anyone," Maya said, her voice controlled but hard. "He threatened my daughter, compromised my handler, tried to use intelligence that would have killed thousands. I am not sitting on the sidelines while you finish this." James entered behind Sophia, also geared up and ready. "For what it is worth, I agree with Maya. We started this mission. We should see it through. Besides, you need all the experienced operators you can get if you only have a 2-hour window." Natasha looked up from the screens, studying Maya and James with calculating eyes. She glanced at Sophia, some unspoken communication passing between them. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but you follow my orders exactly. No freelancing, no heroics, no using this as personal revenge against Kozlov. We go in professional, we extract him alive if possible, and we do it clean. Understood?" "Understood," Maya confirmed. 20 minutes later, they were airborne again, this time in a larger helicopter that carried the full team plus additional equipment. The plan was straightforward on paper but would be complex in execution. Kozlov was traveling by car with at least 4 security personnel, moving along mountain roads toward a private estate near the Austrian border. Intelligence suggested the estate belonged to a Russian oligarch with connections to Kozlov's network, a place where extradition would be nearly impossible once he was inside. They would intercept the convoy at a specific point, where the road passed through a narrow valley, using the terrain to force a stop and then overwhelming Kozlov's security before they could mount an effective defense. Speed and surprise were everything. If Kozlov's people had time to prepare, the operation would turn into a prolonged firefight that could draw local authorities and complicate everything. Maya checked her weapon for perhaps the 20th time, the ritual soothing in its familiarity. Beside her, Sophia did the same, their movements unconsciously synchronized. James sat across from them, eyes closed, doing the mental preparation he always performed before operations. Natasha and the others were discussing approach vectors and fallback positions, their voices competing with the helicopter's noise. "You ready for this?" Sophia asked quietly, leaning close to be heard. "I am always ready," Maya replied automatically. Then, more honestly, "I do not know. Fighting beside my daughter from the future was not something I trained for. Think of me as just another operator, someone you trust to watch your back." "That is exactly how I am thinking of you," Maya said, "which terrifies me because I know what can happen to people I trust in this job. I have lost too many already." Sophia's expression softened. "In my timeline, you were my hero long before I knew what you actually did for a living. Finding out you were a covert operative only confirmed what I already believed. You taught me to be brave, to stand up for what is right, to never back down from a challenge. Those lessons guided me through everything that came after you died. So do not worry about protecting me out there. I learned from the best. I will protect myself." The helicopter began descending, approaching a landing zone 3 kilometers from the intercept point. They would cover the remaining distance on foot, using the forest for concealment. Kozlov's convoy was estimated to reach the intercept point in 75 minutes. Timing was everything. They touched down in a clearing surrounded by dense pine forest, the trees providing natural cover from observation. The team moved quickly into the tree line, spreading into a loose formation that allowed for movement while maintaining tactical cohesion. Maya fell into the rhythm easily, her body remembering years of similar operations. Her mind focused on the mission ahead. The forest was quiet except for the sound of their careful progress. Through underbrush and around trees, birds had gone silent, either disturbed by the helicopter or sensing the predators moving through their territory. Maya's senses felt heightened, every detail sharp and clear. The weight of her weapon, the slight resistance of her tactical vest against her shoulders, the cool mountain air filling her lungs. They reached the ambush position with 40 minutes to spare. The road curved through the valley exactly as the reconnaissance photos had shown, with steep slopes on either side creating natural channeling that would limit Kozlov's escape options. Natasha positioned the team carefully, placing snipers on the high ground, blocking forces at both ends of the kill zone, and assault elements ready to move in once the convoy was stopped. Maya was assigned to the assault team with Sophia and James. Their job to secure Kozlov once the vehicles were immobilized. They took position behind a cluster of boulders that offered both cover and a clear line of sight to the road. Now came the hardest part of any ambush operation. The waiting Maya used the time to study the terrain, identifying alternate routes and fallback positions, gaming out scenarios in her mind. What if Kozlov had more security than intelligence indicated? What if he had counter-ambush protocols and responded with overwhelming force? What if he had been expecting this and had turned the intercept into a trap? Professional paranoia was what kept operators alive. Maya embraced it, let it sharpen her readiness without crossing into debilitating fear. Contact. Natasha's voice came through their earpieces. 2 vehicles approaching from the east. Speed consistent with target convoy. All units stand by. Maya's hand tightened on her weapon. Beside her, Sophia was perfectly still, controlled and focused. James had shifted into firing position, his weapon trained on the curve where the vehicles would appear. The first vehicle came into view, a black SUV with tinted windows moving at moderate speed. 5 seconds later, the second vehicle appeared, identical to the first. They were not speeding, showing no sign that they suspected an ambush. Either Kozlov's security was overconfident, or this was indeed a trap. On my mark, Natasha said. 3, 2, 1, execute. The road beneath the lead vehicle erupted as shaped charges detonated. Not enough explosive to harm occupants, but sufficient to shred tires and immobilize the SUV. Simultaneously, spike strips deployed across the road ahead of the second vehicle, forcing the driver to brake hard or risk the same fate as the lead SUV. Both vehicles came to a halt, trapped in the kill zone. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then doors burst open, and Kozlov's security personnel emerged, weapons raised, seeking targets. They were professionals, reacting to the ambush with trained efficiency, but they were also outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Suppressing fire, Natasha ordered, and the hillsides lit up with controlled bursts from multiple positions. Maya was already moving, using the cover fire to close distance on the vehicles. Sophia moved beside her, their approach coordinated without needing verbal communication. James came from a different angle, creating overlapping fields of fire that forced Kozlov's people into defensive positions. Drop your weapons. Natasha's voice boomed across the valley, amplified by portable speakers. You are surrounded. This is your only chance to surrender. 2 of Kozlov's men threw down their weapons immediately, hands raised. The other 2 hesitated, looking toward the second vehicle where Kozlov presumably sheltered. Those seconds of hesitation cost them. Sniper rounds took both men in the legs, precise shots that neutralized threats without lethal force. Maya reached the second vehicle, weapon raised, aiming through the tinted windows. Kozlov, exit the vehicle with your hands visible. The door opened slowly. Viktor Kozlov emerged, not with his hands raised in surrender, but with a pistol pressed against his own temple. His face showed no fear, just cold calculation and something that might have been amusement. "Clever," he said in accented English. "Very clever. I should have expected this after what happened in Syria. Temporal intervention is the only explanation for how thoroughly you disrupted my operations." "Put down the weapon," Maya ordered, but she already knew this was not going to be simple. "Why would I do that?" Kozlov asked. "If I surrender, I spend the rest of my life in a black site somewhere, interrogated and imprisoned. If I die here, I deny you the intelligence in my head, the networks I control, the future operations I have planned. Dead, I am a martyr to my cause. Alive, I am a prisoner. The choice seems clear." Sophia had circled around and now had a sightline on Kozlov from a different angle. Maya could see her in peripheral vision, weapon steady, finger on trigger. One shot could end this, but it had to be perfect. A headshot that killed Kozlov instantly before he could pull his own trigger. "You cannot shoot me before I shoot myself," Kozlov said, noticing Sophia's position. "Even your talented sniper cannot react faster than my finger on this trigger. We are at, how do you say, an impasse?" Maya lowered her weapon slightly, a calculated show of de-escalation. "You are right. We cannot let you die. You are worth more alive. So what do you want? What will it take for you to surrender?" "Ah, now we negotiate." Kozlov smiled, that same perfect smile that looked so wrong on a man holding a gun to his own head. "I want immunity. Full immunity from prosecution for myself and my key lieutenants. Witness protection, new identities, enough money to live comfortably. In exchange, I give you everything. Names, bank accounts, operational plans, connections that go higher than you can imagine." "You know I cannot authorize that," Maya said. "Then we are back to the impasse. Because I would rather die than spend life in a cage." Time seemed to slow as Maya ran calculations in her mind. Could Sophia make the shot? Possibly, but not certainly. Could they rush Kozlov before he pulled the trigger? Could they negotiate something that gave them Kozlov alive without actually granting real immunity? Maybe if she played it right. But there was another option, one that occurred to Maya as she looked at Kozlov's face, at the confidence in his eyes. The certainty that he held all the cards in the situation. Maya smiled. It was the same smile she had worn in Syria when throwing the flashbang. That wild, genuine smile of someone about to do something completely unexpected. And Kozlov recognized it, his own smile faltering slightly, uncertainty entering his expression for the first time. "You are right," Maya said, her voice light, almost amused. "We cannot shoot you before you shoot yourself. We cannot rush you. We cannot let you die. You have us completely trapped. Congratulations." She holstered her weapon, an act so brazen and unexpected that Kozlov actually flinched. Then Maya started walking directly toward him, hands empty and visible, stride confident and unhurried. "What are you doing?" Kozlov demanded, pressing the gun harder against his own temple. "Stop, or I will shoot." "No, you will not," Maya said, still walking. "Because I just figured out your weakness, Kozlov. You are not actually suicidal. This is theater, a negotiating tactic. A truly suicidal person would have pulled the trigger already instead of making demands. You want to live. You want immunity and comfort and safety because despite everything, you are afraid of dying. You are a coward pretending to be brave. I will do it." Kozlov shouted, but his hand was shaking now, his confidence cracking. Maya kept walking, kept smiling, projecting absolute certainty. Even though her heart was hammering and every instinct screamed that she was making a terrible mistake. But she had read Kozlov correctly in Syria, had known he wanted something other than what he claimed. She was reading him correctly now, too. She had to be. 5 meters. 4 meters. 3 meters. Kozlov's finger tightened on the trigger, his face twisting with anger and fear. Stay back. 2 meters. 1 meter. Maya reached out and gently wrapped her hand around the pistol's slide, preventing it from cycling if fired. Her other hand touched Kozlov's wrist, not grabbing, just resting there with surprising gentleness. "Put it down," she said quietly. "You do not want to die today. Neither do I, so let us both choose to live." For a frozen moment, the entire valley held its breath. Then Kozlov's hand began to lower, the gun moving slowly away from his temple. His expression was unreadable, something between rage and defeat and grudging respect. The moment the pistol was no longer a threat, Sophia and James moved in fast, weapons trained, hands reaching to secure Kozlov. The gun was taken from his hand, restraints applied to his wrists. He did not resist, seeming almost in shock at how quickly his advantage had evaporated. "You are insane," Kozlov muttered, as they led him toward the waiting helicopter. "Completely insane," probably Maya agreed. "But I am alive, and you are captured, so my kind of insane seems to be working out." The operation wrapped up quickly after that. Kozlov's security personnel were treated for injuries and taken into custody. The vehicles were searched, yielding laptops and phones that would provide additional intelligence. Within 40 minutes, everyone was loaded into the helicopters and airborne, heading back to Bucharest with a prisoner who would effectively dismantle one of the world's most dangerous criminal networks. On the flight back, Sophia sat beside Maya, not saying anything but radiating quiet pride. After several minutes of silence, she leaned close and spoke just loud enough to be heard over the helicopter's noise. "That was the most terrifying and impressive thing I have ever seen. Walking up to an armed man, threatening suicide with nothing but psychological warfare." "I learned it from you," Maya said, surprising herself with the words. "From me? How? Because you came back through time to save my life knowing you might die in the process? Knowing you might create a paradox or cease to exist, or any number of catastrophic outcomes. But you did it anyway because it was right. That kind of courage, that willingness to face impossible odds with a smile, I recognized it in myself when I needed it most. Because it came from you, even if you are from a future that might not happen now." Sophia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "That is the most circular reasoning I have ever heard. And also the most beautiful thing anyone has ever said to me." They flew through the sunset, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, carrying them toward debriefings and paperwork and the complicated aftermath of successful missions. But for this moment, suspended between earth and sky, between past and future, mother and daughter sat together in understanding that transcended timelines. 2 weeks later, Maya stood outside a modest house in Portland, Oregon. Inside, her sister was making dinner while 8-year-old Sophia did homework at the kitchen table. Maya had called ahead, had been granted permission for this visit despite the ongoing investigations into Brennan's betrayal and the operational review consuming her former agency. She knocked on the door, heart pounding harder than it had during the ambush of Kozlov. Her sister answered, offered a hug, led her inside where Sophia looked up from homework with a squeal of delight. "Mama, you are home." Maya knelt down and pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. This Sophia was so small, so vulnerable compared to the warrior who had saved her life. Yet she contained within her all the potential to become that warrior, given time and circumstances and choices yet unmade. "Hey baby," Maya whispered. "I missed you so much." At dinner together, just the three of them, talking about school and friends and normal things that felt precious beyond measure. After dinner, after Sophia's bath and bedtime routine, Maya sat on the edge of her daughter's bed and made a decision. "Sophia, I need to tell you something important. Something true that I should have told you a long time ago." Sophia sat up, sensing the seriousness in her mother's tone. "Are you okay, Mama?" "I am fine. But I have not been completely honest with you about my work. I do not help refugees overseas. I work for people who stop bad things from happening, who protect innocent people from terrible dangers. It is dangerous work, and I cannot always come home, and sometimes I have to keep secrets. But I want you to know the truth, because you deserve to know who your mother really is." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the solemn concentration only children can achieve. Finally, she spoke. "Are you a superhero?" Maya laughed despite the tears threatening to fall. "Something like that? But without the cape and with a lot more paperwork?" That is so cool. Sophia's eyes were wide with wonder rather than fear. Can you teach me? When I am older, can you teach me to be like you? Maya thought of the older Sophia, the one who had traveled through time to save her mother's life. She thought of all the pain and loss that had shaped that woman, but also of her strength and courage and unwavering moral compass. Maybe, Maya said carefully. When you are ready, if you still want to learn. But for now, you focus on being 8 years old, on homework and friends, and being happy. Deal, Sophia agreed. Then, with the directness of childhood, Mama, are you going away again soon? Yes, Maya said honestly. But I made a promise to someone that I would never let too much distance grow between us. So I will call more, visit more, be more present, even when I cannot be physically here. You and I, we are a team, okay? Forever? Sophia nodded seriously, then yawned, exhaustion from the evening's excitement catching up with her. Maya tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and watched as her daughter drifted towards sleep. In the doorway, her sister spoke quietly. Does this mean you are staying in this job? Even after everything that happened? Yes, Maya said. But with an organization that operates differently, that has resources and capabilities that can actually make a difference. And with a better understanding of what matters most, Sophia. Her sister asked. Always Sophia, Maya confirmed. Everything else is just details. Back in Bucharest, in a facility that existed between official channels, adult Sophia prepared for her return to her own timeline. She had stayed longer than planned, helping debrief Kozlov, sharing intelligence that would prevent threats in both timelines. But the temporal window was closing. Soon she would have to return to her own world, to the battles still waiting there. Natasha found her in the departure chamber, a room filled with equipment that looked like it belonged in science fiction rather than reality. Everything ready? Almost, Sophia replied. Just saying goodbye, I suppose. To a version of my mother who got to live, who got to know me, who got a chance to do things differently. Regrets? Hundreds. But fewer than I had before I came here. Your mother joined us officially today, Natasha said. She signed the papers, took the oath, committed to working with our organization. James as well. They will be assets to the cause. Sophia smiled. I know, I was there, remember? In my timeline, she died before making that choice. Here, she lives to make a difference in ways she never could before. That is enough. That is everything. The equipment powered up, reality beginning to shimmer around the edges of the room. Sophia took a last look at this timeline. This version of the world where her mother was alive and her younger self would grow up with truth instead of lies between them. Tell her, Sophia said to Natasha, tell her that I said thank you. For everything. For being brave enough to walk up to Kozlov with nothing but conviction. For being honest with 8-year-old me. For becoming the mother I always knew she could be. Yes. I will tell her, Natasha promised. Safe travels, Sophia Rodriguez. The world folded in on itself. And Sophia stepped through, into the spaces between timelines, heading home to a world that needed her. Carrying memories of a mission where everything changed because one woman smiled with a gun pointed at her head and chose to be fearless when fear was the only rational response. In Portland, Maya stood in her sister's backyard, looking up at stars that seemed brighter than usual. Somewhere across time and space, her daughter was fighting battles Maya would never see. But in this timeline, in this moment, another version of Sophia slept peacefully, dreaming of a mother who was honest and present and unafraid to face whatever came next. Maya smiled, that same wild, genuine smile that had become her signature move. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new challenges, new threats to face. But tonight, she was simply a mother who had been given the rarest gift, a second chance to get it right. And she intended to make the most of every single moment.